I'm back again. That's fucking crazy. I didn't think I'd be around for like 8 videos. How many videos do I have? Who cares? I have 2 subscribers though. Thank you. And you. Both of you. So I'm going to start with In a Violent Nature. And just get that one out the way first, because that's the one I really want to rant about real quick. In a Violent Nature plays itself as a Jason Voorhees Friday the 13th homage, ripoff, whatever you want it. I mean, they go as far as keeping the J, removing the rest of the name, and just naming him Johnny. Jason Johnny. This is literally Friday the 13th without the title, without the name. And I mean, it's not trying to hide it. Obviously, it's quite literally wearing its influence in its sleeve. And what it's here to do is to do something new, supposedly. Do something different by giving you the perspective of the killer. This is why this movie failed. Because it is nothing but a gimmick. It is a singular gimmick. It only exists so that you can follow the killer on his way from victim to victim. In between that, it doesn't do much else. It isn't reinventing the genre. It isn't trying to subvert expectations. It's not trying to even remotely fucking surprise you. And here's the thing. I was kind of excited of having like this weird blend of like National Geographic documentation where you're just going through wildlife with the killer silently, I don't know, having pensive moments, introspective moments. Just I wanted to see what that quiet felt like, to like just follow the killer from victim to victim. But I thought along the way we would get explanations for slasher movie cliches, like maybe this time, because we're following the killer, we'll actually see how he catches up to his victims while they run and he walks. Where maybe we'll see how a stick always ends up in the middle of the fucking woods, conveniently placed so that the victim could fall and then die. And it does nothing. Literally, the concept starts and ends at third person perspective. That's it. Almost every kill, for the most part, feels subdued. Some happen off screen. And it doesn't give you any real new perspective. Most of these kills are still just normal kills. And I don't know about you, but I'm surely fucking desensitized to gore and violence and horror films. So when this film, being branded In a Violent Nature, was being hyped over one specific fucking kill in the movie, and then come to watch that scene and it's comically bad, then you're just like, this movie has nothing. It has nothing to give. There's a scene in a lake where 2 girls are skinny dipping, and like they're all flirty. Dialogue is horrendous. I mean, even by them, like I don't know if they're trying to like pay ode to cheesy 70s dialogue, but even by those standards, it's just like, it's bad because that was cheesy because of the time period. This is cheesy because it sounds like, 1, they're reading it or they're memorizing it, and 2, it sounds like they don't believe what they're saying. So obviously the characters there are for cannon fodder. So imagine my surprise when most of the kills we end up going to the victim's perspective. You know, we hear them talk and we hear them give bits and pieces of Johnny's background, you know, and it's, you're kind of like putting the pieces together, and in concept it's like cool because it's like they're building the mythos around these people that have heard this legend and don't know that they're about to get caught up in the legend itself. And that was, but it's just the dialogue. Every single fucking word spoken in this film is heinous, horrendous. Every single performance is like hard to stomach. And you do, like, I guess it does help fuel the audience to be like, yeah, kill them, like fucking murder them. But when you get to that, the film isn't doing anything new. Again, there was a scene in the lake, the 2 women are skinny dipping and they're like flirting terribly, and you see Johnny go into the lake and you're behind him and you're tracking him and you're thinking like, okay, this is where this concept is actually going to prove itself to be something new that maybe other films would want to replicate. You know, and in my head I'm thinking like, we're going to follow him underwater, and there's going to be a clever scene where we see him walking like dead weight on the surface of the lake, looking up at his victim as she's floating for like 5 seconds. All I wanted was like 5 seconds of that. And then we'd see like, no, but literally as soon as he goes underwater, he disappears. We cut to the perspective of the victim. And just like any other film where a victim is floating in a lake and you know she's about to get the machete up the ass, she gets pulled down and that's it. And then she floats back up and it's like, bloop, dead. And it's like, oh, dude, like what an absolute miss of an opportunity to at least have a creative shot or do something genuinely worthy of this promoting this film under this one gimmick, you know? And it just doesn't do that. For the most part, is the enjoyable parts for me were like watching him walk through the forest in silence and just kind of in my head, like going like, what is he thinking? Like, what is happening? Like there's a genuine curiosity that isn't explored. And that is what curiosity should be. You should give your audience a little bit, but not too much. And those scenes work. The ambientness of like just him walking, and I kind of like that. And it's nowhere near as long as people are making it out to be. It's not like 20 minutes of him walking through a forest. It's like maybe 4 or so minutes, and then he's at his next location where he's about to butcher whoever's next. And you see him kind of walk around and feel his victims. It's like playing Hitman, where you're just kind of like seeing people's routines before you take down your target. This is basically what it is. But that's all it is. There's nothing unique about this film. And it doesn't go out of its way to do anything unique. It's literally just a Friday the 13th film of lesser quality, in my opinion, with better cinematography, obviously, in my opinion. Down to like bringing in a specific character in the film for a few minutes that is very much a type of character that it was in Friday the 13th 6, I believe. It was just like hard to stomach because it's just there for the sake of being there, because it has to be there, because obviously what they're paying ode to, you'd expect those things to be there. But for all the hype and all the marketing that did exist around this film being this crazy reinvention of and I believe even like one of the trailers, it's like the reinventing of slasher genre. I was like, get the fuck out of here. It's just nothing special, and I think that in itself really pissed me off, because clearly you could do so much with this idea and it just stays at a gimmick. This is like when movies came out with 3D for the first time and weren't specifically shot for 3D, but to them it was just enough that 3D was offered. It was like, hell, people are going to watch this just because, like, how many 3D movies do you get a year? You know what I mean? And it feels like a gimmick. It feels underappreciated, underrealized. It's nothing. There's nothing to this movie. And then there's a weird monologue in the movie that takes place what feels like 30 minutes, but it's probably like 7 or so. And it's a weird analogy about bears and wildlife. And somehow, obviously, this, being a reference to our killer just being a senseless killer, and how it's just in his nature to kill like a bear. But in my head, I'm like, well, none of it was senseless, because the entire film, his mission is to get back the locket that his mother gave him as a child. So there's not necessarily anything senseless. He was brought to life because of it. So, like, again, the analogy was, and that's how the movie ends. Completely anticlimactic. It's just like, here's a monologue. See ya. And I was like, bro, what? It was just so, and also the kills. Oh my God. All the hype about this one specific kill that was just, some of the critics were saying that they walked out vomiting. I was like, get out of my ass. Ain't no fucking way you've seen that many movies as a critic and this is the one that makes you walk out. First off, the big scene, I'm going to spoil it because I don't give a fuck, is a yoga kill where you see it in the trailer. She's about to walk off the cliff because she's scared. She turns around because she realizes she's, or she doesn't turn around, but she stops because she realizes, I've got nowhere to go. And then Johnny sticks a hook into her stomach, hooks her head, and then from the other end pulls her head into her belly from behind. And the way that it's shot, these like insane close-ups of like, look at her fucking spine popping out. Look at her head. It was like a play-by-play. It was like a step-by-step. This is how you fold the box. It was so slow. She wasn't screaming. It was clearly a mannequin. And I would let Terrifier get away with it, because the charm of Terrifier is that it's so grotesque, you don't even give a fuck. Because there's no other way you could do this. They go so far into like gore that Terrifier gets the pass of using prosthetics because that is the charm. It is practical and it's gruesome, and there's nuances to the makeup, and it just works, even though it's exploitative and it is to some extent cheesy. That's part of the charm. This shit, all the other kills seemed very grounded and very real, and this was the one that was going into Terrifier lane. I'm like, what are you doing? Stay in your lane. You're not Terrifier. Relax. And then some of the kills happened off screen, which really fucking confused me. The film is called In a Violent Nature, not in a perceived violent nature, not in an insinuated violent nature, not in a so possibly violent. It's called In a Violent Nature. Show me the violence. So I just wish I would have waited until this landed on Shudder, so then I could have just halfway through been like, I'm good. I've seen this film. There's nothing new here. But watch it on Shudder if you have Shudder. Get Shudder if you don't have Shudder. But watch it on Shudder if you can. Don't go into the theater super excited and then have your hopes completely demolished. So, there's that, In a Violent Nature. And then the next film, Body, Mind, Spirit. So this is interesting because found footage films are an interesting concept, right? Found footage films, I would say mostly don't work. I would say in the general audience, right? The general population of audience goers, movie goers, that aren't like keen on watching every movie that comes out, like you know, you or myself, or like super movie buffs, right? Found footage films tend to be effective in an audience, right? In a theater, right? And I think, you know, Blair Witch, everyone talks about Blair Witch, like that started everything, right? But I think found footage films didn't really take off till Paranormal Activity 1, because the marketing behind that was brilliant. And at that point, there was a mass appeal for something in the found footage area. You know, like Blair Witch was something very cult followed, right? There's a fan base, there's a close-knit cult following of people that love that film, and they pass it around like a fucking cursed videotape, right? But Paranormal Activity was the first real mainstream release of something like that really hit with audiences, and the marketing for that was genius. I mean, I remember watching that film and not knowing if it was real or not, and people asking me, is it real? Was that real? What the fuck? And then, of course, they made 30 of them, right? And, but that film came out at the perfect time. It was the perfect time to do that. Then after that, we got The Devil's Doorway, The Devil's Due, The Devil Inside, or just Devil Inside. Basically, the devil loves found footage films. But my point is, what was it? The Last Exorcism, like all these found, which was, in my opinion, one of my favorites in that genre. But I think in this era, found footage is hard to pull off. Is hard to pull off, because now there's so much that you can smell the marketing. The brilliance behind Paranormal Activity is that it was self-marketed. It wasn't like they had posters and all this shit. Like, as I remember correctly, the advertisement for that was like, if you want to see this film, vote, I think on their website, and the more votes you get, this film goes to your state. It goes to your theaters, and you get to watch it. And so they were building hype off of word of mouth, built on pure curiosity and fear. Times are different now. Social media exists. YouTube is a banger. There is nothing that can get past people. There's no way in hell you could sell a movie as something that potentially was, you know, something as potentially really found footage, like the Poughkeepsie tapes, which was terrible, but I remember the marketing for that film was more akin to like Paranormal Activity. It was like this idea of like, these films are almost like forbidden to watch, right? It was like you were gathering in a theater to watch something that you shouldn't have watched or been a part of. And nowadays, with streaming and just us being so tech savvy and having all these resources and platforms and just ways of consumption, found footage films don't fucking work. And now I get that the whole trend is like, well, found footage has moved from found footage to like desktop horror, right? Or like, that's not the proper term for it. Not analog horror, but more of like, okay, here, you know, here's like searching or or Megan is missing, where it's like films where it's from the perspective of like a camera on a monitor, and people are watching, right? And yes, it's more relevant, but when you are sticking to that relevance, obviously you're doing it with the intent of attracting current audiences. That already tells us that it's a fabricated story, a narrative, a production, right? And I feel like if you were to make a found footage film today with VHSs or, VHS or DVDs or something along those lines, where it is analog and it feels like it's something that they found, that exists, that something that happened decades ago and we just came across it, that hits because it does feel found footage in nature. This film is about a YouTuber who is like holistic in nature, and I believe this genre is kicking off. I call it holistic horror, right? We had like tarot, and now we have this, where tarot is about like, your sign and tarot cards and reading your fortune and aligning with stars, and this is like, feeling your chakras and tingling with your vibrations and becoming one with self and body and mind and all this, right? They've taken this very relevant thing and they've turned it into a horror film. My problem is that, well, first let me finish telling you. So basically the film is, she's a YouTuber who's has a fitness channel just built around yoga and meditation and chakras and shit. And she has just inherited her grandmother's house. She finds in a basement type room, because it's not really below, it's not even an attic, it's just like a door that opens up and it looks like a basement space. So she walks in and she finds a book that damn near looks like the Necronomicon. She picks it up and she starts reading and realizing that her grandmother was also someone who was in line with yoga and meditation and sort of this, the holistic nature of everything. She was all about alignments, and she goes, well, I can use this as content, and whatever my grandma was teaching, I'm gonna teach to everybody. Even though this shit looks like it's written in blood in a text that could very well be Sumerian, or hellish. This could have been like demonic linguistics, or this is like when the professor in the Evil Dead, in the beginning of the Evil Dead, he fucking starts, just in general in Evil Dead, when they start reading out loud, reciting what's on the Necronomicon, and you're like, why are you doing that? Don't. It's like, I remember when my boy said in the 2013 remake of Evil Dead, when my boy said "Kunda," and then the camera goes in and you're like one of the demons running through the woods, all Sam Raimi, like, you're like, why'd you do that, bud? Here we are. So this chick's basically doing the same thing, reading out of something she should not fucking be reading out of, right? The thing could literally be wrapped in human skin and she still would have read it, because the thing looked terrifying. It's thick, made out of leather, pages are falling out, the edges aren't straight. Do movies not exist in your world? Right? Like, do curses not exist? Like, do you not watch a single horror film? Because that is a no-no. But anyway, she reads out of it, and slowly things start happening. Cameras start moving by itself. Things in the background start popping up. Shadows start moving. The camera cuts quickly right before you see something peeking. It's all the conventions and tropes of a found footage film. And in an era where it's already been done to death, this shouldn't have existed. Now, I get that from a filmmaking standpoint. If you're breaking into film, making something like this cheap, quick, and if you give it enough love and attention, it will catch people's eye. My problem is with the overhype, right? Because this is someone's into the industry, right? And if I came across this film, right, and I didn't read all the like taglines and buzzwords of, this, hyping this film will terrify you, this film will keep you from sleeping, this film will raise, paralytic demons from the fucking ground, and they will stand over your bed and paralyze you from how terrifying this, like, it would just, it's orgies will happen in hell from just how good this shit is that you'll join. Like, you know, it's just, when a movie is so hyped, it really grinds my gears. Because I try not to listen to the hype, but I also don't want to be cynical about every movie that has hype. You know, because the reason we watch films is the excitement of something new. That being said, fuck me. This movie has nothing new to say about found footage films. It has, the presentation is there. And what I mean by that is it's bookended by this very ominous room, the shot, you know, this kitchen, dim lighting, and there's a laptop on the table, and the camera's, you know, we're panning in, and we, you know, the screen loads, and we're watching what's happening. So someone is watching these YouTube videos of her, and it ends that same way. We pull out, and now, like, we're pulling away from the laptop screen, which we just saw through. We're pulling away, and then the laptop shuts, and it cuts to black. And so in my head, either that's just there stylistically, because none of that bookend doesn't fill in the story. It doesn't. I don't know if they're trying to say that we're like hackers that came across these, like, these files, these video files that were never uploaded. But then if they were never uploaded, then why are there YouTube ads every like 20 minutes? Because if they weren't uploaded, then there would be no ads, no ad revenue. There would be nothing. So that was very confusing for me. And so that was a little bit of that. It was hard to invest and be immersed when that happened, because then the ads were funny. They were like genuinely mimicking ads that we see, down to like how everything is shot, or like, you know, when someone when someone's doing an ad, you know, here's, you know, use my code, here's 10% off, and the ads really do look like shit that we would see on a product like a skincare, or the YouTube channel of a fitfluencer. You know, it's well put together, it's well realized, and those ads existing was a good way to sell that this was something that we were watching, but again, under the premise that those bookends are not stylistic and they're actually narratively involved into the story. If we're hackers and we're watching this thing happen on our laptops, why are there fucking ads? So confusing. But anyway, the film does focus on a lot of things in the background. And, you know, her bending down, or her moving past the hallway while she's talking to her mom on her phone, and an entity, which is essentially her dead grandmother, is popping up behind her. And that's pretty much like the film for the first 40 minutes. It's just things showing up and elusively, you know, eluding her as she's walking by them. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. There's one part where the camera's clearly focused on the stairs as she's going down it, and you could see through the steps, and clearly her dead grandma's standing there, and there's even the flashlight of the camera's on her, and she doesn't react. She just pretends it's not there, and it's like, come on, really? It's just, it lacks inspiration. It hits everything that it's supposed to do to be considered a found footage film. Shit in the corner. Oh, that's creepy. A gimmick where the camera moves by itself and does a 360-degree thing, so you like pay close attention and get paranoid, you know, looking at every frame, and yet it does work. But because you know that that's what they're doing, their intent is to have you look because you're paranoid, so you're gonna do it, and you want to see if they're gonna get creative with it. And I remember the first time that camera technique was used in Paranormal Activity 3, which was the scene where the dad put the camera on the fan platform, and it would just like go left to right. And it was the first time I'd ever seen it was in that film, and it was so cleverly implemented. And in this, it's just not, because it all really does barrel down to we're moving. Oh shit, there's something behind her. Oh, we're passing. Oh, we're back on her. Oh, there's nothing there. It's just this, there was, but there wasn't. And the thing is, like, if you're telling a story, sure, you want the audience to react, but also like, if you're telling a story and I'm watching it to see the character react and live in the shoes of this character, I want them to react to what's happening around them. Because at that point, the movie just becomes a haunted house attraction where you're watching things happen that the main character isn't aware of. And if you're not susceptible to that kind of horror, then you're just watching someone completely oblivious. And just, it's not affecting you, it's not affecting them, therefore the film is wasting your time. And I think that there has to be a fine balance struck in films like this, because I don't think simple scares like that are effective anymore unless it's on a big screen. And this movie is, on streaming. I rented it on Amazon. And I know it's going to be on Shudder, I believe, at some point, most likely. But it just doesn't do much. There's so much empty air. There's so much that they could have pushed. There's so much they could have commented on. And there are those moments of like her speaking into the camera, trying to act like what her audience expects her to act like, right? Very like bubbly, and you see her try and retry like a lot of us have when we make videos like this, where you're like, no, I hate that intro. And personally, I try not to do that. I try to just go in as myself, because I don't want to build that habit. I definitely don't want to build that habit, but it's cringy watching her do it. Imagine if it's just like me catching myself do it, cringing at myself. There was one clever scene that I thought worked, and it was this, I don't know if this is true or not in holistic culture, if you will, but she was doing this thing where she puts a string, and she was talking to her YouTubers or her audience going, hey, like, this is where the release, right? So like we put a string down our throat, and we swallow it, and we hold it, and we swallow the bottom half, and then we pull out the negative energy. Is that real? Let me know. But she does that, and as she's doing it, she starts like, you see the string kind of move like someone else is moving it and controlling it, and you're like, oh shit, this is gonna end well. And she starts choking on it. It gets shoved down all the way down her throat. She's like, and she pulls it out, and she's just like pulling it out, and there's like black guck, and it was clever for like the first little bit that it was happening. And then obviously, like with every demonic possession film or something, there always has to be some kind of black bile, which is like, I hate. It's overdone. Like, I think it's much creepier if someone's just puking because their body feels weird and they don't understand, instead of just having like straight up black bile, like oil come out of them. It's like, it looks kind of cartoony in a film that's trying to stay somewhat grounded in reality. But all the demonic possession movies love doing that nowadays. But yeah, that part was kind of creative. She pulled it out. She pulled out what was, and I don't fucking remember, but it was like a stone or something. And that part was creative, but there just wasn't enough of it. There wasn't anything else. The ending gets gratuitous and violent out of nowhere, and it's the only way, I guess, the only place they could have taken the story, the only place they could, someone has to die. It was gruesome-ish, considering that the rest of the film really doesn't have any gore. So it was kind of I think there's one thing I will say is, like, it does work when a film is understated and violent, and then at the end it just hits you with one brutal kill, and you're like, that was effective. But I think that's more illusion, because the kill, she smashes your other friend's head in with a kettlebell over and over because she's possessed, and she got her over to her house, and that's kind of the climax of the film. It's like the end of her transformation. She has to take a soul, and she does that, and the camera's like doing the whole 360 degree thing again, so you don't see the impact, but when you do come back, you do see like her head caved in. It was a pretty cool effect, I'll give it that. And then the camera keeps turning, and by the time it's already on her, you see like half of the body is already inside of the room where our protagonist found the book. So yeah, it's just I didn't enjoy it. I'll be honest, I didn't enjoy it. I was trying to find things to like about it, And I know that someone will. There are people out there enjoying it. I just don't think found footage films work well today. I think found footage films live or die based on their marketing, and you can't market a found footage film as anything other than a overproduced found footage film or a haunted house. You know, it just doesn't work anymore. You know, films like The House That October Built, Paranormal Activity, what is it, The Devil's Doorway, not to be confused with The Devil's Due, was The Devil's Doorway was about a found footage film in a nun convent. That was really good. Those films worked because they came out of nowhere with no hype. And then when a few people saw it, the hype became word of mouth, not the marketing, not the production company. They just existed in this realm of interest where people wanted to be a part of this forbidden thing. They wanted to touch this like tangible forbidden thing. And you don't have that kind of marketing anymore. I'd say the closest thing we have to that is Longlegs, and that's because we know it's a film that's produced, directed, scripted, edited, but in its marketing, it's just, there's no real dialogue. There's uncomfortable sound. There's ambient sound. There's someone reading a scripture, words scrolling up and down on the screen, and a bunch of images of the film with no real intent on spoiling anything for you. That's brilliant marketing. And that's not a found footage film. So anyway, that is my film discussion for these two films. It's been rough for horror as of the last month and a half, which is crazy because we started out strong. But anyway, my next review, I did watch Furiosa. I might do that. I just feel like it's too long past. Like, the film was fucking incredible. I really have nothing else to say except what everyone's saying. Furiosa was great. It doesn't match up to Fury Road, but it is still a spectacular fucking film. So, epic. Watch it. Go. That's it. There it is. I'm watching Bad Boys on Saturday. And I'm a big fan of the Bad Boys films. I love the 90s actions. So I'm excited to see the fourth one. Anyway, that'll be my next one. Until next time, I'll see you later. Oh, that was so awkward. Oh my God, I am that girl.